Today we've got a great malicious compliance story involving getting back at a teacher who was horrendously strict with the dress code. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, casino makes winning pay table. A few casinos ago, we had a progressive on all of our games. Put $5 on, and you were playing for the jackpot. We installed an ultra high limit room, and the bigwigs wanted a $25 version to match the expected clientele. They had built the pay table themselves. One of our dealers was brilliant. He did the math in his head and felt funny. He did the numbers and realized that it was EV positive. It was a game that could not be lost if you had enough money and time. You didn't have to hit high on the pay table. The value was low enough in the pay table that the risk of ruin was absurdly low. He brought it up to management and they dismissed him, so he got his wife and mother to come to high limit and play for months. They were not blackjack players. He didn't care. The math worked out to a $50 an hour job, comps galore, high roller service. They never hit the jackpot, but were well within the money. Many months later, they realized their mistake. His family, well entertained and much richer. Clarification: a progressive is a lottery-style jackpot where a flat bet enters you for a chance to win an increasing total. These games have an escalating list of prizes on a pay table. The lesser prizes pay a fixed amount, and they had overpaid the lesser prizes to an extent where the game paid more than it took. This means that the lottery pays you to play regardless if you hit the jackpot or not. Casinos always win on progressives where normally 2/5 of the bet goes to the house, 2/5 goes to increase the progressive, 1/5 goes to the operator of the game. The math should work such that the lesser prizes are afforded by the game. This was not the case due to the faulty math. Mathematicians can calculate an EV, expected value, to determine the RTP, return to player, which is normally less than 100%. This game had an RTP of plus 100%, meaning if you played long enough, you should not lose. You can lose, but the risk of ruin, the statistical probability that you will go bankrupt playing the game, was low, as the prizes most frequent on the pay table had overpaid the player to an extent where my coworker could bankroll his family with 1,000 bets and have a near certainty that they would win. He had a gambler's mentality backed by math. He could have lost. Fun fact, there is a tipping point where the progressive is high enough that the game becomes EV positive, but the jackpot is so hard to hit that most players meet their risk of ruin before hitting it. There are teams of gamblers that track progressives and will hog the game till they collect the winning jackpot, spending weeks with rotating shifts. This is common on specific slot and keno machines. Gamble, bad. I know what OP's describing is some Jerry and Marge go large type nonsense. But knowing me, I would go there and I would be like, statistically, I have to win, and then I would walk out of there with absolutely nothing. I kind of agree with OP, gamble bad. Basically, I operate with a mindset of, whatever I'm going in there with, I'm probably gonna lose, and to try to be okay with the idea of that. Necessary Action 190 commented, I found a mechanical roulette table that was hitting the same numbers consistently, made about $1,000 on it. Next time I was in, it was gone. OP replied, some of the wheels I worked on were wobbly and sticky. I'm not degenerate enough to chase them yet. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of malicious compliance, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below. Our next story is, fire me for driving too fast at 15 kilometers per hour, then tell me to drive back to the district office? You got it, boss. Gonna be kind of a long one, but I have a malicious compliance and a pro revenge in one. A friend reminded me of this when talking about all the forest fires burning in Canada. In the late 80s, I got a job with the Ministry of Natural Resources driving to support fighting forest fires. Great job, just over double minimum wage, major bonus at 19, and they had no limit to the number of hours you could work. Fire season started early, and by mid-May, I was supporting one that was, I think, long time ago, 300 to 400 hectares and growing quickly. 1 hectare equals 2.5 acres. Back then, I think the whole district was around 100,000 square kilometers. Think all of Indiana, so there was a lot of driving. One day, I get to the on-site headquarters and get told to wait while they found me a return load. Little later, I'm told to go to the helicopter staging area to pick up the fire boss, FB. To preface, the road was crap. I pick him and a few others up and make my way back. Halfway there, I hit a deep pothole, and the fire boss just loses it. Starts bellowing about danged kids speeding, no respect, etc. for the 5 minutes it takes to get back. I found out on the way there that going too fast was not a good deal, so I made sure to not go faster than 15 kilometers per hour, 9 miles per hour. As soon as we get to the base camp, he slams his way out of the truck and screams, "You're fired! Get back to the district and have them process you." Okay, freak you very much, sir. We were deep in the bush. I don't know how deep, but it took me close to 7 hours to get there. Cue malicious compliance. I grabbed two 20-liter gas cans, 5 gallons, and set off. Real slow. If 15 kilometers per hour was too fast for these roads, then the proper speed was obviously however fast the truck went at idle. Unless there was a hill, I wasn't a monster. It took 22 hours to reach the first paved road, and then I set the cruise control 5 kilometers per hour below the speed limit and went to get fired. Extra $300-ish, yummy. I process out and I meet one of the guys, call him Crew Boss, CB, who taught the level 1 forest fighter course I took before I got hired to drive. We got along well, but there were only 2 new full-time hires that year, and none are on his crew. He had just come with one of his guys who broke his leg and was going to personnel to find someone new. I was quickly hired on as his 4th. 2 hours later, I'm being driven to meet his crew at a fire. Couple says later that the fire is declared out and we're off to a new fire. Yup, the fire I was fired from. Kinda revenge-ish, but it gets better. Q Pro Revenge. Crew Boss, it turns out, is besties with Fire Boss. So Fire Boss has our crew as the initial response crew. This meant that we spent a lot of time riding in the helicopter with Fire Boss and responding to jump fires that would take minimal time to deal with. It took a week before he recognized me, and I watched out of the corner of my eye something I thought was only in books or said as an exaggeration. This guy went from pink to red to actually turning purple. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I seen the skittle flowing out as he yelled into his headset, and I got some major side-eye from Crew Boss for the rest of the flight. When Crew Boss asked about it later, and I explained, including the drive back, he almost pissed himself. Turns out, surprise, Fire Boss has a long history of exploding over nothing and taking it out on the nearest poor idiot. He ended up firing 2 more guys over the same thing, and likely the same pothole. So Crew Boss knew what he was like, but they got along really well. Turns out he also really liked poking the bear. For the rest of that fire, Crew Boss made sure I was seated so I was the first person he saw if he looked over his shoulder. On a later fire, our crew got admin duties and Crew Boss was Fire Boss's number 2. I got to be, as Crew Boss put, his helper monkey and Fire Boss's jock itch. The rest of the crew knew, so there wasn't any friction, and they got a kick out of it. It was a great summer, and I worked for Crew Boss 3 more summers through uni. Always went back with great stories, really nice money. I collected unemployment during school, not sure if it was legal, but no one said anything, and pretty sure time has run out anyway. In amazing shape, but with a really weird tan. OP kept highlighting the pay as if like it would be a surprise or an unexpected thing, but you're running around in helicopters, driving on roads that aren't paved, going to fires and taking care of them. I certainly hope the person that's doing that is getting paid pretty well. I myself would want nothing more than a person who does that kind of thing making more than double minimum wage. Durlican M-Balls commented, "Think of the size of all of Indiana. Should I know that? The US doesn't really think about Indiana." Just Aioli 1233 replied, "Americans will use anything but metric." Our next story is, there's nothing that says the marketing team doesn't work directly with clients. About 10 years ago, I worked for a small web hosting company. Initially, I was hired as entry-level support, taking calls from customers that accidentally broke their websites or needed passwords reset. Then I worked my way up to team lead, where I was working with SSL certificates and cloud hosting accounts for high-value customers. Finally, they moved me to the marketing team after they found out that I had an English writing degree. This was my first copywriting job and a huge step in my career, as I'm still a copywriter to this day. I remember being overjoyed when I accepted the position and thought, I'm never taking another angry phone call for the rest of my life. Cut to about a year later, I'm writing blogs, emails, video scripts, and most importantly, not taking phone calls. I'm at my desk in the marketing department, and in walks the team lead that took my position after I was promoted. We'll call her Ruth. Side note, I objected to Ruth being promoted into my old role because she's extraordinarily bullheaded and rude. She would repeatedly overstep her bounds as an entry-level tech, telling other employees when they could and couldn't go to lunch and trying to manage the call queue when her only job was to take said calls. Ultimately, my concerns went unheeded, and she got the job. Ruth walks up to my desk and sets a bulleted list in front of me. It's a vague business strategy she's written up. Essentially, the cloud hosting division of the company is rapidly expanding, and the CSO tasked Ruth with figuring out how to field all of the additional high-value customers. Ruth's solution? I resume some of my responsibilities as a tech team lead to take escalations from angry cloud customers. I said absolutely not. She completely ignored me and just kept going over her strategy. Like, literally, I'm saying, "No, Ruth, I'm not doing this," and she's like, "Anyway, as you can see here, when a tech needs to escalate a call, it'll come to you." I was fuming, but patiently explained that I was on the marketing team now, and my tech support days are over. She said, "Well, I checked the roles and responsibilities section in the company handbook, and there's nothing that says the marketing team doesn't work directly with clients." She then gave me a crap-eating grin and says, "We'll have to get a phone installed at your desk," and leaves. I was freaking livid. I would be going from no phone calls to specifically only taking calls from the angriest customers we have. Then, as I was recounting this awful situation to one of the graphic designers, something dawned on me when I remembered what she said about the roles in the company handbook. As the only copywriter, I was the one in charge of managing and updating the handbook. The graphic designer saw this dawn of realization on my face and was like, "Oh man, please do what I think you're gonna do." So I logged into Evernote, or whatever system we were using to manage and edit the handbook, and added a subsection to the marketing team's roles and responsibilities that specifically said we do not take phone calls, emails, or have any direct interactions with customers. This also safeguarded the graphic designers and videographers from any future bullcrap from Ruth. I took the changes to the CSO, who gave me a smirk and signed off on the edits. I then took the sign changes to Ruth and set them on her desk. Yeah, actually, it does say in the company handbook that the marketing team can't take calls, as you can see here. I guess you'll have to figure something else out. She stared daggers at me, but I just shrugged and left. That was the last of our interactions. She ended up poaching some top performers from the entry-level tech team to make a dedicated cloud team that never really functioned well, and she ultimately quit without a 2-week notice a few months later. So I got some extra "I told you so" satisfaction about her not being qualified for the job as well. I still haven't taken a single customer phone call since I became a copywriter, and I intend to keep it that way. The fortunate thing here for OP, where not a lot of other people might be quite as lucky, is the fact that not only OP had access to editing the handbook, but also their changes were just straight up approved. OP had weapons at their disposal here that not everybody else might have. Second Drive commented, "It's all about knowing what you're authorized to do." I remember attending an IMAX movie where the line was really long and went upstairs. My buddy and I saw a formerly unseen elevator door open, and we hustled to it as a chance to bypass the line. There was an employee in the elevator who told us that we had to be authorized to use the elevator. My buddy said, "Well, can you authorize us?" After a brief pause, the employee said, "Yes, hop on." Got fantastic seats. I'm still impressed by his immediate ability to ask the right question. For some reason, the story reminded me of this moment. Our next story is, hope you enjoyed your drive. I work for a property management company. My job includes time-sensitive sign-offs in the New York City Department of Buildings portal, which we normally have adequate time to sign off, and most of the time it's just by logging in and clicking a box or two, but missing a sign-off can mean big fines. Dan, an older manager brought out of retirement, handled compliance. He was not tech savvy. After he missed a sign off and the company was fined, we met with our boss to figure out how to stop it from happening again. I suggested one shared company login, with alerts going to our company's administrative assistant. She would see emails and hound us to get stuff signed. Dan refused. He blamed liability and unauthorized sign-offs, but the real issue was that he waited until the last minute and did not want anyone seeing the reminder emails filling his inbox. The owner kept things the same, but warned Dan that the next mistake would cost him his bonus. Soon after, staff told me Dan was trying to dig up dirt on me. I sent a company-wide email calling him out for that and stating I would no longer help him with sign-offs. Months later, while Dan was on vacation, an engineer called me asking if Dan still worked with us. He had been trying to reach him for over 2 weeks with no response. A sign-off was due the next day. I told the engineer Dan was on vacation, but said I would text him. The next morning, Dan called me in a panic and asked if I could handle it for him. I told him I wouldn't be in the office and reminded him that, because of his concerns about security, it would not be appropriate for me to sign in for him. I told him he could do it from his phone and hung up. Dan was not able to do that. Instead, he drove 6 hours round trip during his vacation just to sit at his desk and check one box. What does it even say about your company that it's a legitimate strategy to send a company-wide email saying, "I'm not going to help this coworker with sign-offs ever again"? I mean, it worked out, but you would kind of hope that the powers that be would prevent a worker from just not doing their job and requiring somebody to send a mass company email saying, "Hey, not going to cover this guy's butt anymore, thanks." Honest Pepper commented, "I hope that you continue to never do anything for Dan and the company ever again. Also, encourage other employees to watch out for his greasy tactics and get them to turn on him in his attempt to bully you." OP replied, "Dan put in his notice for retirement. We also think he was expecting the owner to beg him to stay. He did not. 2 months without him. It's such a better environment." Our next story is Malicious Compliance at Culinary School. One thing before you start reading this, I just want to state that most attitudes about the right way to cook something are silly in my opinion. There's a reason they call it culinary arts. Cooking is more an art than a science. Some of the best recipes have come about by people trying something new or making a mistake and finding what they made was delicious. So really, the only thing that matters is what you make tastes awesome to you. If that's the case, then you did it right. Recipes are guides, not hard rules. This happened about 20 years ago while I was going to college for culinary arts. It's fairly minor, but I thought I would share anyway. The chef instructor in charge that day assigned me the job of boiling potatoes for mashing. Now, how I was taught growing up and how the school taught you to boil potatoes includes salting the boiling water. When doing this, you have to add a lot more salt than most people who have never done it before would guess. They were trying to teach how to do this by feel without needing a recipe, but he found it difficult to get students to understand just how much they needed to add, so he decided to combat this. He would really stress that whatever amount you think is enough, add that plus a fair amount more. A saying that I had actually heard before I ever went to school. Now, I've been making mashed potatoes from scratch most of my life. My family uses this method, so I'm very familiar with it. I know how much salt to add. I explain this very good-naturedly, trying to joke about how a lot of people who aren't familiar with the method don't know and how frustrating that must be for him. But he didn't believe me, kept insisting I add more than I think I should put. No matter what I said about it or what assurance I gave, he didn't seem to think I could possibly know what I was doing. I even suggested if I was wrong, it could be fixed, but no, he insisted I put in more than I thought I should. So I don't know if I was just in a bit of a bad mood that day or he just said that "add what you think, then more" line one too many times, but I did exactly what he said. I put in what I knew was the right amount of salt, then added more. The result was the most insanely salty potatoes I've ever tried. No matter what we did, we couldn't fix them either. This was a large batch of potatoes. We had to use one of the huge standing mixers in the bakery area to mash and mix it. The only thing that could have helped would be make a ton more potatoes and mix them in, and that wasn't really an option. After that, he seemed a lot more prepared to take me at my word about such things. Addendum: Hey, I think I might have made this sound more difficult and or important than I meant to be. To be clear, it isn't really, which is part of why it bothered me at the time. Especially for a school where mistakes aren't as important, it annoyed me. Probably wasn't the best response, but I was in my early 20s and surprise, surprise, I didn't always make the best decisions possible. I'm only sharing this because I think it's funny. Again, to be clear, adding salt after boiling isn't that big a deal. It's fairly easy to do, and yes, you can make amazing potatoes without pre-salting. That being said, it also does affect the time it takes to complete the job if it's not expected, especially when batch cooking for well over 100 people. When it's added, it also affects the flavor, so which you do depends on what you want. A commenter below brought up a point I was forgetting, that multiple mixings of the potatoes can result in an unpleasant texture. Another reason mentioned by the school why they thought it was important to learn how to salt the water properly. This was a school where they try to teach you how to do things in what they believed is the best and proper way. There's all sorts of things in life that are easy and not a big deal when it's just an informal situation, but things change a bit when you're doing something professionally, and especially when you're being trained to do something professionally. Even the most simple things in the world get more complicated than they need to be when you factor in money and other people. Professional kitchens also tend to be high-stress environments and can often be fairly toxic, at least in my experience here in the USA. Small mistakes, the littlest things that shouldn't matter, can be blown up by someone above you. A lot of times, something like boiling the potatoes is done by a prep cook, while a higher-level cook in the kitchen will finish them. If that cook finds that they have to do extra work because you didn't do your job right, they tend to not take it well. So it's also about what the people you're working with expect. I was taught that they would expect the potatoes to be pre-salted and angry that they would have to fix your mistake. But it's only a mistake because it isn't what was expected. I gotta be honest, I wasn't expecting a crash course on the psychology of salting potatoes, but here we are. I definitely understand a lot of what OP's saying though. It's kind of equivalent to any kind of work handoff situation, where let's say one person completes one part of the project and then hands it off to you to do the next thing. If they do it and they don't do it properly, or let's say they don't take good enough notes to explain what it is and what needs to be done, most people are gonna be upset, right? Especially if they've got to do extra work now. Short Attempt 8598 commented, "In what universe is it difficult to add salt to mashed potatoes?" Our next story is Mrs. Evans, keeper of the dress code. This all happened about 20 years ago when I was in 7th grade, 12 to 13 years old for those not in the US school systems. I remember this day vividly as it was one of my most rebellious actions against authority I had done in my school years. My 7th grade science teacher was a curmudgeonly lady that we'll call Mrs. Evans. Now, Mrs. Evans had no joys in her job of teaching preteens the foundations of science, but did enjoy sending students to the principal for minor infractions. An easy way of getting sent to the principal was through dress code violations. Throughout the entirety of the school year with her, I had seen Mrs. Evans send no less than 75% of the class to the principal's office for dress code violation, with most being the girls in class wearing shirts that were too revealing because their shoulders were showing, with the others usually being something easily fixed like wearing a hat. I showed up to class in my standard outfit that I'd been wearing up to that point in the school year, a t-shirt and jeans. However, being the outdoorsy kid I was, I had a slight tear on the knee of one of the pant legs. Mrs. Evans honed in on the slight tear and instructed me that I would need to be wearing jeans without a tear in them for her to be able to teach her class without distraction, and to go to the principal if I was unable to do so. Being a smart butt 13-year-old, I decided to comply by going to my locker, getting my stapler out, and stapling the tear shut on my jeans. Upon return to the class, this was not good enough for Mrs. Evans, keeper of the dress code. She repeated her previous instruction and said that if I returned without the torn jeans being replaced, I was to go to the principal. Cue compliance number 2. I went straight back to my locker, got a pair of scissors out, and cut off the entire leg of the jeans with the offending tear, much to my mother's later dismay. Upon my return to class, Mrs. Evans was quite unhappy. The rest of the class was now properly distracted from her doing, much to her chagrin, but Mrs. Evans was the keeper of the dress code for a reason one supposed. She cited a line in the school handbook stating, "No phrase on any clothing allowed." This time, I was sent to the principal. I had never gotten in too much trouble in school, was in a lot of advanced placement courses and played football and track for school, so my record was pretty clean. The principal was confused as to why I was sent until I told him I had just come from Mrs. Evans' class, which told him enough after he saw one pant leg normal with the other pant leg completely cut below the knee. He told me to please just wear my gym shorts and have this be the end of it. Cue compliance number 3. I returned to the class wearing my gym shorts for the day, wearing them over the offending jeans. Mrs. Evans, keeper of the code, decided this warranted a call to the principal from the class phone to report me and get me into further turmoil. However, I think the principal was just done with getting his time wasted that day. After Mrs. Evans got him on the phone and spoke her piece, there was a long silence while he assumably responded to her. She then hung up the phone, her face slightly flushed, and proceeded with the lesson. I never once got called out on any dress code violations by the keeper of the code for the remainder of my middle school years. You know, I'm glad I finally have a chance to just inquire and ask, what is it about shoulders that are so distracting? You can't wear a tank top because your shoulders are exposed, and that's just too distracting? Are they like trying to use the shoulders as like an innocent explanation for a less innocent reason? Like, spaghetti straps and tank tops tend to be more exposed in general, not just on the shoulders, and that's why. I never understood that. Like, it sounds to me like one step removed from the people who are like overly into armpits and stuff. Real Ultimate Popo commented, "Glad the principal told her off like she deserved." Did you ever get an apology, or did she continue being a curmudgeonly turd? OP replied, "Well, I cannot confirm what was said between her and the principal, but that is the assumption. I can only imagine how many other students had actual issues he was being distracted from, including an arson attempt by one that same year. And nope, I never got an apology, and honestly, I don't think I really deserved it. I was technically out of dress code, as asinine as it was, and was obviously being a smart butt, hormonal, rebellious preteen. She continued to be curmudgeonly throughout the entirety of middle school though, with her being one of the least liked teachers in the school." Our next story is, if it ain't in the ticket, it ain't my problem. I used to work IT support at a mid-sized company that thought it was a Fortune 500. We were understaffed, underpaid, and expected to be psychic. People would call or corner us in the hallway saying things like, "Hey, my printer's acting weird, can you swing by?" while we were juggling 5 tickets and trying not to lose our minds. Our manager, a guy named Curtis who had never touched a server in his life, brought in some consultant who told him we needed more structure. So Curtis implemented a new policy. No work gets done unless there's a formal ticket, no exceptions. At first we were like, okay, whatever, more paperwork, but at least it protects us. Then Curtis took it further. He said if we did any task not in a ticket, even if it was 5 seconds to plug something in, we would get a write-up. He called it discipline for procedural drift. Fine, message received. The very next day, the VP of sales, big name, big ego, storms into the IT office yelling that his laptop won't connect to Wi-Fi and he has a Zoom call in 10 minutes. I look up and ask, "Did you put in a ticket?" He goes, "No, I don't have time for that, just come fix it." I smile, "Sorry, we're not allowed to do anything without a ticket. New policy." He scoffs and storms out. 2 minutes later, we get a ticket. Urgent, VP cannot connect to Wi-Fi, fix ASAP. But here's the fun part, the system had a rule. Tickets came in first come, first served, unless they were escalated by Curtis, which this one wasn't. So I tagged the ticket and slotted it behind 6 password resets, 2 printer jobs, and 1 guy asking how to insert a picture in PowerPoint. Meanwhile, the VP is pacing like he's waiting for a kidney transplant. 15 minutes go by, he calls Curtis, Curtis calls me. "You need to go help him right now." I say, "Absolutely. Can you go into the system and escalate the ticket?" Long pause. They say, "You know I can't do that without a director level override." "Exactly," I say. 45 minutes later, the VP has to call into a Zoom meeting from his phone. He sounds like he's standing inside a fish tank. After the meeting, he comes stomping back in, furious. I point to the open ticket queue. We're happy to help, I say, just waiting for it to rise to the top. The next day, Curtis quietly changed the policy. Tickets are still required, but urgent issues may be addressed immediately at IT's discretion. We kept the printout of that original policy on the office fridge for months. Freshia Rosa commented, "Curtis sounds like he actually has the right idea. If it's not in a ticket, you aren't working on it," is a pretty common IT mantra that sees your A fairly well. Not being able to shuffle priority without a director is a bad call and is where he gets into trouble. The help desk lead at a minimum should be able to massage ticket priority. At the point where the VP is chewing nails, someone in a management capacity should have said, "You need to do this now, I'll handle the paperwork." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.